Ah, Kia ora koutou katoa toa. Thank you very much for being here today. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. Ko waiau ko he tangata tiriti ahau, no ini ahau. Noho anau ki Tāmaki Makaurau, ki Kaipātiki, ko Baruch Jacob toku ingoa. So really warm welcome to all of you on here today. Who am I? My name is Baruch Jacob. I'm tangata tiriti from India and now live in Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland, in the region called Kaipātiki. Today's conversation, and some of you might have noticed, have changed the name from What Changed to Thinking Aloud. It was part of the very rough feedback I got last week about getting a different name. This name might work a bit better. But today's conversations with someone I've known and had a lot of respect for a very long time, Anaru Ah Kew. Anaru and I probably met the first time sometime around 2019 when we were both working with healthy families, sort of in the social innovation space. And I love the way Anaru thinks, not just about thinking about complexity and innovation, but also the traditional and indigenous wisdom he brings to these conversations. So I'm going to bring him on in a second and ask him to introduce himself as he would like to, and we'll take the conversation from there. Kia ora iho, welcome.
Kia ora, nā mihi e te tuakana. Nā ui huakina te tāhainga nei kia hau ki te whaiwahi tēnei kaupapa. Me mihi ka tika ki te runga raua, e mihi ana kia rātou ko wehi atu ki te pō, e mihi ana kia rangi nui, e tūnui, kia papatuana ki wahora. Huri no kia tātou ngā wahotanga o rātou mā tēnā tātou katoa. Ko ai au, ko ai tētahi hau tutu manioro pia, o Waikato, ko Ngāti Kairo, me Kaitahu, oku iwi. E noho nei au ki te taitonga o Tāmaki Makaurau, ki Waimāhia, ki te taha o te Mānukunuku o Turoa, ko Anaru ahau. Nai nei ka taku tūranga ki tētahi roopū The Cause Collective, ko taku mahi he kauringi Māori, mo te roopū. So kia ora whānau. My name's Anaru, and Baruch's definitely right. Have sort of connected with him over the years, through the Healthy Families Forum, and just recently too, actually, because I've only just come back into the space, so it was an awesome opportunity to connect him. But actually, in saying that, I just want to acknowledge Brooke because I have followed him on his LinkedIn, and I did let him know. Just around his posts have been, pretty awesome, especially in the mental health space, mental wellbeing space, and I previously worked as a mental health and wellbeing advisor for Auckland Council the last year or so, and so what Brooke was posting up was not just at a personal level, but awesome insight, and being able to be vulnerable on such a platform like LinkedIn. So, nā mihi e ho. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Anaru. Yeah, and it's sort of I think there's been, particularly post-COVID, there's sort of been a lot of us more willing to be open, and I think sort of the context side has been really cool about that. And to sort of talk a little bit more about sort of I know you on all kinds of worlds, bro. So there's the Te Ao Māori world, there's the South Auckland world, there's the social innovation world, there's the mental well-being and mental health world. Each of those is complex in itself, but sort of you sitting almost like a spider at the middle of all of that web. What would you say you're trying to shift in the world, brother?
Hey, and just in reference to that, bro, I do. You're right. I move in those spaces. What's that old saying? The jack of all trades, but a master of none. So, and it's true, bro. I think I'm able to go into all these different spaces, but maybe able to feel comfortable. By no means an expert, but able just to maneuver into these spaces.
Right.
If you look at my true background, I'm a tradie by heart, bro. When I first left school, I went into being a roofer. So I was in the construction around men. So, but again, invaluable, the insights and helped me. And then I went into banking, then mental health, and then urban development, and then obviously prevention, health, and social innovation. So
Mm.
constantly chopping and changing all these into all these portai, but like I said, definitely not a master of any. Even in Te Ao Māori, bro, I'm very much what you call a PP pile still, on that journey, and it'll be forever. But I think just able to feel comfortable in those spaces. But what was it? Pātai again? I'm sorry, brother. What?
Oh, just asking, what are you trying to shift in the world? What do you want to change in the world?
Oh man, I mean, if we look, like you said, you sort of alluded to it in South Auckland, Te Ao Māori, working in that social change space. Even that mention around mental well-being. These are big kaupapa for all of us in this modern day and age. And I suppose being really fortunate in my mahi of late to be able to be in a position to look at some of those gnarly, wicked issues that keep those problems in place. I think this week, as just mentioned before, as we were talking earlier, bro, it's been a big week for Te Ao Māori.
That's right.
If we start with the census data, that was released on Wednesday. I think 1 in 5, people in Aotearoa have Māori whakapapa. I think it's 978,000. Might as well just say 1 million, because we know I've got a couple of uncles that wouldn't have filled out that census. I bet you everyone else has got an uncle or a nephew or an auntie that probably didn't either, so probably bumps it up to 1 million. And we know there's heaps overseas, which is cool, and it's that old, I know there's a lot of distrust in the census, but it's that old saying, if we're not seen, we're not heard, then we're kind of forgotten. And we need our Māori to be seen and heard and to be visible drivers of change. Sometimes when we see, how do we get in the driver's seat of change? Change is happening. Everything's in a state of flux. The weather's in a state of flux. Our systems are in a state of flux. But we got to think, how do we get in that? When change comes, do we put all that energy into resisting change? Which is a lot of energy. Or do we put that energy into trying to get into the driver's seat of that change?
Right.
And, for too long, we're not even in the car, bro. We're holding on to the roof rack or the tow bar, getting dragged behind. So, sometimes it feels like we're getting into the back seat, into the passenger seat. How do we get into that driver's seat when we know there's this stuff happening around us? So, and that can be in any field, bro. Like I said, I'm jumped into all these different spaces around mental health, urban regeneration, development, design thinking. How do we get Māori to sit in these positions, bro? And you've been a part of it, Brooke, in the design thinking, where Indigenous knowledge has really come and reshaped how we do that practice.
That's right.
And has really shaped how we go about doing design thinking. And one of the cool things that, and I will acknowledge my colleague Alex Whitcomb, who was one of our design thinkers I first came across.
Right.
And again, I was a novice in that space, but learned so much off him. But we used to always say, who are we designing for? When we think about environments and whatever spaces, how do we design for the unheard voices, the marginalized? And when we talk about unheard, we're not talking about people. We're talking about things like the manu, the birds. We're talking about the tuna. Are we factoring those things when we are designing or thinking how things are going to impact on an environment or the systems and structures? Quite funny, you'd go into Hui and you'd talk about that, and you're like, how does we go? Why are you talking about birds and unicorns for?
But that's you raised such an interesting point, because that's often the thing. Humans, we kind of tend to think of ourselves as slightly separate. I say no, not as humans, but in some cultures, or at least in sort of post-industrial cultures, we think of ourselves as separate from the earth, separate from the world. But everything that we design for ourselves has an impact on everything else. That's like the houses we build, the roads we build, even the clothes we wear, the food we eat. Everything has such massive impact on the rest of the world now.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if we put the likes of Te Taiao, Papatūānuku at the forefront of the way we build houses, bro. So, as you see houses go up, are they going to be up for 50? I know the house I'm in right now probably won't be up for another 10 years. But has it been designed to, to be deconstructed in a way that doesn't, pollute our environment, or, put more rubbish into our environment? How are we designing communities to know that, that they can be, deconstructed or pulled down just as fast as they went up? Sort of that sort of thinking. So,
yeah.
but when we're governed
Yeah.
by things like other mainstream policies and systems and structures like RMA, and this is why bringing Māori to the table will people say it slows up the process, but hey, it's important. That's why you have like iwi mana whenua sitting at the table, because they will bring that kōrero to the table. And sure, there's this whole, you're hearing it in government now, the fast track bill and trying to move things really quickly.
Fast.
But taking away that capability to really think things through and think in the long term. We saw yesterday, with the activation, the Toi Tu Te Tiriti nationwide.
Right.
And one of the key phrases there was mokopuna decisions. Mokopuna outcomes. What if we designed always with that sort of lens on, that sort of 7 generations or even more, some people 500 years thinking, in our design thinking, not just for what's going to benefit us in the now.
Yeah, and I think I find it really interesting, Anaru, that you kind of, the thing that you're talking about shifting in the world is sort of getting Māori voice at all of these places, because in all the worlds that I've known you, that's exactly what you've been doing, sort of trying to get a more Māori voice into the places where you can make change, where you can shift. So that itself is the change you're trying to make in the world now. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yeah, and you're right, bro. I've been advocating, promoting, speaking to, nudging, disrupting. The crazy thing is, bro, it's me that gets pushed into those, and it's not me that I'm trying to push into those spaces. It's other people, because you're making the noise. It ends up you going into those spaces, and one of the things, one of those catch cries in systems design is, how do you get comfortable with being uncomfortable? And having to go in those spaces myself has been, because a lot of the time, like I said, jack of all trades and master of none. I'm going to sit in these spaces and have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And the old catch cry people would say, "Do you fake it till you make it?" But it's probably been a little bit true for me in a sense. Like you said, as you alluded to me in the different hats around design thinkings, bro, I'm just a pretender in that space, 100%.
Oh, I don't know. I think you're way too humble, right? What gets in the way, Anaru? What gets in the way of the shift of getting Māori into this sort of the Māori world? Not just Māori people, but also the Māori way of looking at the world, eh? What gets in the way of making the shift?
I think it goes back to like even for us as Māori, that mindset. It's like that intergenerational trauma that's been passed down, and it keeps us in that space. It's like a poverty of mind and spirit, because it's been intergenerational, and there's no belief in oneself that you can do better or that there's better out there. It's kind of accepting this is my lot. But again, just like I said, I think we've got this awesome young generation coming through. They've been the benefactors of the fight of other people for holding on to the te reo and the culture, and they've come through these schools, koanga reo, kura kaupapa. They're breaking out of that generational cycle. They're breaking out of that poverty of mind and spirit. They're the face of of that circuit breaker. And I saw a lot of that yesterday up here in Tāmaki. That generation, they're at the forefront and unapologetically Māori. It is, you can see that they're not shackled by that poverty of mind and spirit that has held our people for generations in a space. So, that's why those activations, that's why those whikoi yesterday are really important, not just to show to, te ao tōranga pū, but even to ourselves, to inspire ourselves.
To tell ourselves who we are. I love that's such a massive thing what you're saying, because I love that you're talking about the things that are getting in the way are not so much the things around us, but ourselves and who we have allowed ourselves to be. And as we tell ourselves different stories about who we are and who we can be in the world, things start to change, And to your earlier point about comment about mokopuna, sort of a mokopuna view of designing for the world, and it's like exactly that. In my world, maybe not, and we don't have kids, but in my nieces and my nephew's world, there we can start to see change, And I love that, man. I really love that.
Yeah, and that was loud and clear yesterday. Across the nation,
Mm,
across the motu
mm,
was
yeah,
thinking about. And when we're talking about mokopuna, it's mokopuna that we may never ever meet. Not just our
that's right.
grandkids, but
Yeah,
those
not just immediate. Yeah.
beyond and on and on. What are we doing now? I like to call it in our mahi at my work, Cause Collective, we call it oranga whakapapa.
Aye.
Imagine if you were creating things, with your whakapapa in mind, that it's been passed down to you through the plight, through the fight, through the actions of your tupuna. You are now a kaitiaki of that whakapapa, and then what are we doing it for those mokopuna outcomes in the future? And we talk about whakapapa, we're not just talking about our DNA or our blood, we're talking about this whakapapa connections to maunga, to awa. So it brings in that whole paradigm there of what are we thinking, what are we doing to leave or put in for our mokopuna and those mokopuna decisions and outcomes. So
it fascinates me. Like I've been following. I'm obsessed with sort of relationality as a reality of the world. We don't have, how do you put it? I was listening to someone else today, and they were saying we are in a relationship with the world. The only thing we can do is like, is it a good relationship? Is it not a good relationship? Can the relationship be healthy or not? Is the only question we really have. And everything is related. And it's so interesting, like when you talk about it that way, especially like our relationships with the land, with the maunga, with the awa, with the moana. And more and more sort of Western or sort of industrial, post-industrial science is starting to realize that more and more. It's like the organism is not the tree. The organism is the forest. The entire forest is the organism. And how a forest sort of, there's been some fascinating reading and research going on in kind of that space. I'm just, there's so much of sort of this ancestral wisdom that's only now starting to resurface through the weeds of bad science, right? Now the bad science is starting to, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah,
I picked up a word, that you said ancestral wisdom, which is quite, we're in this precipice of change with artificial intelligence, right? It's everywhere. It's going to touch every little thing that, and what we're doing.
Right.
And again, part of going back to what I said, I met a guy, went up north to Kaikoe, to Rawene to catch up with Papa. Rerata Rokiha, and met his nephew Caleb, and he was from up there, young boy, not a boy, young man, and he's been doing his PhD in applied mathematics and then artificial intelligence. It's back here for a bit, and again, he's going to be one of our young Māori in the driver's seat of artificial intelligence, bro. And then how's that going to impact us and Te Ao Māori? So again, rather than waiting for it to happen on us, we got to get it, put the front foot and get it. Really interesting, that we have people moving in these spaces. And you talk about ancestral wisdom, we got artificial intelligence, but right now at the moment, ancestral and AI, ancestral intelligence with artificial intelligence, is the thing that's just as important. And just to reiterate, and when we're talking about things like mental health and well-being, especially in our workplaces, as far as like leaders, managers, whoever, of people, we're on this paradigm shift, a shift in the way in how we're going to be doing work. And we're seeing mental health issues play out, mental well-being in our workplaces, probably way more than we've ever seen, especially in this post-COVID world.
Interesting. Yeah.
What we need for people is, the capability we used to have in leadership roles can now be held. It was technical knowledge. Well, we'd end in leadership because we knew stuff, and then we'd find in time that we'd sit in leadership, and sometimes that's not enough to lead people just to know things, and that capability now can be held by a computer through artificial intelligence, the technical side. So what we need now is that emotional intelligence, the empathy, the ability to connect, hear, see, feel people. Through I used to use things like ata whakarongo, engaging all our senses. And then with that, we need cultural intelligence, for our people leaders. This comes from artificial ancestral intelligence. And so
Mm.
when you're growing up with that culture, it's not something that you've learned at uni or you can read out of a book. It's the way you've been brought up. It's the way that you know about, when to listen and when to go pick up a tea towel and how to show respect to your auntie. It's just that cultural intelligence of knowing what to do when you walk into a space, and what kicks in straight away. It can't be taught. You've grown with it. And then the next one on top of that is the wairu intelligence.
Same on.
They've got to understand that connection to wairua, to that spiritual realm, which plays out in our daily lives. And so, in this world now, when we're talking about mental health and well-being, if we don't fully grasp, if your people leaders don't grasp those sort of things, then there's going to be no wonder why our staff, our kaimahi, are going to struggle. And so it's an interesting topic.
And when you talk about wider intelligence, you're not meaning religious as such, are you?
No, not per se, but it's pretty subjective to, everyone is brought up a certain way, and obviously faith and belief is really important to people. And so who am I to say, what that is for others? But I suppose wairu intelligence is that bigger purpose, that something bigger than yourself. It's that thing that what keeps the cup overflowing or full. When your cup is empty. For me, my cup's low, man. It's that go back to your ancestral mountain and cleanse in the wind. So going back to where I'm from in Raglan, being by the water there, even here in Tāmaki, I'm by the water. Following things like the maramataka. It gives us some intentionality to what are the best days to be by tangaroa. So that's wairuatanga for me, and it plays out on the daily. And it keeps me balanced in a world that is noisy. And there's a lot happening on, and there's a lot coming into here, overstimulated. So how do we, for me, and I think we just came out of the kore phases a couple of days ago, kore phases. One of the best phases on the maramataka, because it tells us just to be able to be comfortable with not having to overstimulate ourselves. And sometimes even when we think we're resting, we're still not. We're still reading books. We're still reading our phones just because we're not moving. But can we feel comfortable with sitting in nothingness? And nothingness isn't nothing, because when you're doing nothing, you're still doing something. So it's not nothing. Right. Like te kore, it's a void of potential. Maybe you've actively pulled yourself out of doing something, but your inner self, your tamaroto, or your wairua is actually doing the mahi for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool, Anaru. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That explanation. Sort of going into it a bit deeper. Thank you for that. Really appreciate that. And sort of to kind of swing it back into getting some of these ideas or these ways of seeing the world into the heart of various systems that we're part of, right? But they're talking about health, they're talking about innovation, they're talking about geographies like South Auckland. And we've said a little bit about what's getting in the way of doing that mahi. What are some of the things you're currently doing to sort of, get into those spaces?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a complex issue, when we talk about these things, and when you take a system approach, what are those levers that we can look at and try and create a nudge in a system that's, and even like we've seen with the budget and politics and just how that, is a system, but not the only system. We get caught up with that. And I suppose one of the biggest things, is, even in my mahi, but personally is, and we talked about that intergenerational trauma, but what's the flip side of that poverty of mind and spirit is to try and build intergenerational health and wealth and self-determination for our Māori, especially in South Auckland. And how do you know when that's done? Well, when Māori in South Auckland are able to achieve what we call oranga whakapapa. But what's a real pragmatic way of seeing that, or something we can focus on? Well, something that's happening all across Tāmaki, but in South Auckland, is urban development. We're seeing a big shift in the way we live. So, the quarter acre dream now is a shifting paradigm, and we're going into intensified housing. Again, it's a change that is coming, but again, how do we get in the front foot of that change, and how do we get Māori? Māori house ownership has been decreasing, really low. It's one of the lowest, not as low as Pacifica, but it's low.
Right.
And, you get some really good social outcomes when people are able to not just have a roof over your head like when you're renting, but to build the foundation underneath your feet.
That's right.
And a house can represent, house ownership. In this modern world, can actually plant you into a community, so you're not transient. Can be more involved in civic duties and local community decisions. Your kids are grounded in the community, going to the same school. And I've seen a lot of behavior change when you shine a light on the housing. You're moving people from social housing, from transitional housing into market rental, and then hopefully affordable housing. I've seen people, solo mums, give up smoking, give up drinking, give up drugs, because they see, if they can see the pathway, you shine the light on that pathway, they give up that stuff, because they see the house as a tohu, as a sign of intergenerational wealth. That's gonna, and I've worked in the smoking space with Māori women, as in South Auckland. I'll tell you, not even your own mortality makes you give up smoking, but I've seen people give up smoking. They can see the house because they know what that represents as intergenerational wealth and being grounded. So, how do we, again, with that change that's coming, how do we open up those opportunities and shine a light on that? I'm a benefactor of my grandparents, having a Māori Affairs loan of something like $8,000, but man, I set them up, and then my uncles and aunties have all done pretty well on house owner as well. So, it has that intergenerational,
absolutely,
rather than intergenerational trauma, intergenerational health and wealth. So in a modern world, something practical, obviously, and I think it's a big kaupapa for South Auckland.
Yeah. Oh, kia ora, bro. And I suppose we probably need to start winding up. People are probably finishing their lunches. I need to get back to mahi as well. But for us, how do people support the work that you do, this work that you're trying to do? And I say generally, but also even us as tangata tiriti, to sort of support this, the whakamari of the world, the Māorification of the world, I suppose. How can we support your mahi?
I think yesterday was a great example when, we saw lots of tangata tiriti and tauiwi that jumped on and were part of the kaupapa, part of the movement, and showing to, everyone else, hey, like, you don't just have to be Māori to be concerned about things.
That's right.
And understanding that, that what does te tiriti and actually entail, and what does it mean for me? What does it mean, for us as Aotearoa going forward, to create a better Aotearoa? A lot of these wicked problems and issues, if we ground things in te tiriti as a starting point, it gives us all that level playing field to start, especially from an equity point of view, to come, start at that point altogether. So, again, yesterday was a great example. Get on the kaupapa, meet people, and don't be whakama. It's great when we see our homie, as the Māori word for allies. So, and if obviously, if there's anything that of interest to you, you can reach out to me, Anaru Ah Kew at the Cause Collective. We're open to collaborating and having some deep dive to the fat conversations. So you bring your whakaaro, you're more than welcome to come to us. We're in South Auckland at 15 Earl Richardson Road. You'll find us on the Cause Collective. You'll find my contact details there, and if you reach out to Baruch, I'm sure he'll hand them over to you.
Might take my cut. Nah, jokes. Kia ora, bro. There has one question just come in from. One question just come in from Anna Jackson. Tēnā koroa, thank you for sharing your whakaaro, Anaru. It's easy to feel a bit gloomy at this moment. What are some of the things you're seeing in your community and your work that give you hope for the future? I think that'd be a really cool way to close, my brother.
Yeah, and I'm only going to relate it to what I've seen this week. You saw, like yesterday, again, a mobilization, I think that took all of 3 days. We have some pretty savvy younger people that, obviously know to navigate this technical social media world. And older people like me just jump on, and follow. And it's great because we've got some real leaders coming through. we've got people that are not just going to sit back and take it. We've got a generation coming through that are willing to lead and really challenge the status quo. So things that may seem gloomy, people are not just going to sit here and take it, especially our younger generation. Giving them a voice and giving them space to lead, because again, they're going to inherit this world, and they need to be at the forefront in the driver's seat of driving kaupapa. So it was great to see that. We got some, like I said, some really good people coming through, and it's exciting. And for me, for us older ones, it's just how do we clear the way for them?
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Anaru. And I think we'll close on that. Thank you so much for your time, and sort of, again, you just jumping on this is like, can we have a chat? I don't have very much structure, but can we have a chat?
No, awesome. Best way to do it.
Really appreciate your time, my brother. And yeah, for those of you who are listening, I think we do need to close. And so if you have any new questions, I won't be able to put it on. But Anaru and I are both quite easily reachable, and I'm always really happy to put you in touch with him if you want to have a chat. But yeah, thank you for being here today, and hope to see you in one of the future ones. The recording for this will be put back up on LinkedIn, and if anyone wants it as such, I can give you access to it. Should be fine. Okay. Well, have a good long weekend, whanau,
Kia ora.
and thank you all.
Te konara.